bim, 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 bam. Bim, 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 bam. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Hine matov manayim shevet ahim gam yachad. Hine matov manayim shevet ahim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet ahim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet ahim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet ahim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet ahim gam yachad. I'd like to welcome all of you to our Shabbat service and those of you at home, and especially Rick and Shelley. My name is Richard, so I like Rick, and my most favorite yoga teacher of all time is Shelley, so I won't forget your names. Okay. We are in the North County of San Luis Obispo, which is a challenge for Jews, and there will come a time in about 2 weeks when this sanctuary will be full and overflowing, but tonight it's not. So, in the greatest tradition of Reformed Judaism, we will count 2 big Torahs and 1 little one in there and 1 little one here, and we have more than a minion. Okay. So there's no problem whatsoever. We'll begin our service on page 2 with the blessing over the Shabbat candles, and I would like to invite all the ladies to come forward, if you will, and join in the lighting of the candles. You don't have to, Shelley. Okay.
We don't have accompanists tonight.
No.
We'll wing it.
Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu, lahadlik ner, shel Shabbos. Amen. Thank you. We'll continue our service with the Kiddush. It's on page 5, and if you will please stand and join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kadsho v'achavav ratzon hinhilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit ki hu yom tehila l'mikrei kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim. Kivanu vaharta, kidanu kidashta, mikol hamim, v'shabbat kadshecha, v'achava uvratzon, hinhaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh ha-shabbat. L'chaim. Amen. Please be seated. Okay. We're going to skip many of the introductory prayers and turn to page 20 for L'Chadodi. And Rick and Shelley, it's customary in our temple that we do the first two verses, and then the last verse we will also do, and when we get to the last verse, we will stand and face the door in the rear. And since we don't have an accompanist, I'm just going to revert back to childhood melodies. Okay, so here goes. L'chadodi lekrat kala panei Shabbat nikabala. L'chadodi lekrat kala panei Shabbat nikabala. Shamur v'zikur b'dibor echad. Anu ahamuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad. L'shem u'tifaret v'lichila. L'chadodi lekrat kala. Panei Shabbat nikabala. Lekrat kala. Panei Shabbat nikabala. Likrat Shabbat lekur nacha. Ki mehabracha mekam nesucha sof maseh mashabat hila l'chadodi likrat kala panei Shabbat nikabala l'chadodi likrat kala panei Shabbat nikabala. Boi b'shalom afiru bala, gam b'simcha uvsacha, to'ef emunei am sigula, boi kala, chadodi likrat kala, panei Shabbat nikabala, l'chadodi likrat kala, Nehi Shabbat nikabala. Please be seated, and we'll continue our service on page 24. Thank you. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShoresh, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bohem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Baruch hu ni l'shalom malachei l'shalom malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Seitem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. We'll continue on the next page with the Hati Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. V'amal divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'hayedecha beit Yisrael bahagala u'v'zman kohariv v'yamaru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mivarach li'olam li'ol maya yisborach Yisparach v'yishtabach v'yispar v'yiraman v'yisnaseh v'yishadar v'yishaleh v'yishalal shamei d'kudusha berechu lehila min kol berachasa v'shirasa tush b'chata v'nehemata dahamiran b'yama v'yamaru amen. We'll continue with the Baruch Hu on page 28. Okay. And please stand. Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach. Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam va'ed. And let's read together in the English on page 30. Blessed art you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed art you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. And please be seated. Okay. And we'll continue on the next page, page 32. And again, let's read in English together. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Amo, Ohav Amo Yisrael. And we will continue with the Shema, and we normally do the Ve'ahavta in Hebrew, but I'm not going to do it tonight. I'd like to do it in English just to remember what it really means, because sometimes I forget. I don't understand all the Hebrew. So let's do it together. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Hashem, Kavod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. And let's read the Ve'ahavta together in English. You shall love Adonai your God, the next page, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God, Adonai Elohechem Emet. And just so we remember, the reason that we say the Shema loudly and very quietly we say the second line, Baruch Shem Kabod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. And the reason we say it quietly is because that sentence is not in the Torah. And we distinguish between what is in the Torah and what is not in the Torah. Okay. Now let's go to page 40, Mi Chamocha, and we'll sing the first three lines together, and then let's read it in English together. Mi chamocha bo'elem Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehila osei felech. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped together? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Your children witnessed your sovereignty, the sea splitting before Moses and Miriam. This is our God, they cried. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. We'll continue on page 42 with Hashkivenu. And again, we normally do this in Hebrew, but I'd like to do it in English because I don't remember the words and what it means. Just once in a while, I like to do it in English. So let's read together on page 42. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, for your name's sake. Be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hafrek se'it shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. And we continue on page 44, and please stand and join me in singing V'shamru. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat l'doratam b'rit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat l'doratam b'rit olam. B'nei uvein b'nei Yisrael od hili olam, od hili olam, od hili olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat l'doratam b'rit olam. Ki sheshes yamim asa Adonai, asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim v'et ha-oretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat l'doratam b'rit olam. We continue. Shabbat v'yinafash, Shabbat v'yinafash, Shabbat v'yinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat l'doratam b'rit olam. Please remain standing, and we'll continue on page 46. Adonai sifata tefila ufi agi tefilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. We come now to the silent prayer. Almost all Western religions have followed this tradition and incorporate a time for silent prayer and meditation within their worship services, but it began with this. So this is the time to either you can read the Hebrew, you can read the English, or you can read nothing and just think. And what you're going to think about, and what I'm going to think about, is what did we do last week? What were our encounters with fellow human beings? Were we good? Did we make the world a better place? Or were we not so good? And if we weren't, what can we do next week that will make life better? These are the kinds of things that we should talk about. We're going to read silently to page 62, and please feel free to be seated when you're finished. read together on page 62 at the end of the prayer. There's a paragraph in English that starts, "My God." The old Siddur said, "My God, guard my speech from evil and my lips from speaking guile." And when that translation was in front of me, I deemed this the lawyer's prayer. So let's read together. "My God, guard my speech from evil and my lips from deception. Before those who slander me, I will hold my tongue, I will practice humility. Open my heart to your Torah, that I may pursue your mitzvot. As for all who think evil of me, cancel their designs and frustrate their schemes. Act for your own sake, for the sake of your power, for the sake of your holiness, for the sake of your Torah, so that your loved ones may be rescued. Save with your power and answer me." This is the moment for the sermon, which I can do. Okay. The Torah portion for this week is Ki Tavo, which roughly means getting ready to go into the promised land. And we're coming to the end of the Torah, and God recognizes this, and so he is speaking very quickly and wants to repeat everything that he has said in Exodus and Leviticus. He's going to repeat again because we have a new generation about to enter the promised land. And these people are the children and grandchildren of the original Jews that left Egypt. These are not slaves. They have not heard the original admonitions from God and Moses back 40 years ago. And so God is repeating everything that he has said previously in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and some little bit from Numbers. And there's nothing new here in this Torah portion. Last week and this week, what we get are the rules governing behavior. And they're extensive. They cover everything: divorce, banking, individual responsibility, injustice to the stranger or the orphan or the widow, treatment of workmen, generosity to the landless, the homeless, kindness to animals, honesty in weight and measures. And this week, we get a double whammy. We get a whole pile of blessings. If you follow my rules, says God, I will make you rich, famous, powerful. But if you don't, you're in big trouble. Okay, that's the gist of it. And that pretty much covers the entire Torah portion. Okay. It's blessings and warnings, on and on and on. Now, first God does this, and then Moses does it. And for Moses, it's his third discourse. The message that he's trying to convey is we have to enforce the law, God's law. Last week's Torah portion ended with a discussion about weights and measures, and I want to read that to you. And by the way, a lot of the laws from the Torah, especially from Leviticus, have found their way into modern California law. So weights and measures, these were the first consumer laws, consumer protection laws. It just goes on and on. How do you treat animals? What happens when your ox gets away from your property and destroys your neighbor's crop? These are all civil law issues that modern American jurisprudence is based on the Torah. Okay, so what this says is, thou shalt not have in thy house diverse measures, a great measure and a small measure. A perfect and just weight shalt thou have, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And then it goes on. Okay. After he talks about weights and measures and all the behavioral things that we're supposed to do, he concludes with this. Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way as ye came forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way and smote the hindmost of thee, all that were enfeebled in thy rear, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thine enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy God has given thee for an inheritance, Thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget. Okay, now Amalek, when the Jews left, when the Israelites left Egypt, they were ambushed by Amalek. And Amalek was a tribe a Canaanite tribe. They were descended from Esau, and they were predatory. So what they did is they attacked the Israelites, but the way that the Israelites were leaving Egypt, they had the strong people in the front and the weakest people in the back. So women, children, and the elderly were at the very back of the column, this 600,000 people column. Well, Amalek attacked the weak and feeble. And in God's view, Amalek was the embodiment of evil. Okay? And so when God says you will blot out the name of Amalek so you will not forget, the rabbis have said in every single generation, the Jews have had an Amalek. There's always been one. Okay. Well, it was the reference to Amalek that triggered a lot of thoughts going through my mind. And the first thought I had was, when a scribe writes the Torah, typically he will begin his day by taking a piece of, I'll explain this in a minute, but let's call it paper, writing the name of Amalek and then blotting it out. And that's the way that scribes start their day before they start writing any portion of the Torah. Well, I got to thinking about that, and that led to some questions. Who wrote the first Torah? These are just things that are going through my mind. When was the first Torah completed, and how is a Torah made? These are all questions that came to mind. So I thought, let me find the answers, and here are the answers. We're going to learn this tonight. Okay. Who wrote the Torah? Well, it depends. It depends on what you believe. You can say that God wrote the Torah, or you can say that God instructed Moses to write the Torah. But if you do that, there's a problem, because in the Torah, Moses dies. At the end of Deuteronomy, the very end of the Torah, Moses dies. And the last 8 verses of the Torah describe his death and his burial. So Moses could not have written that. It's not possible. And I'm not sure that God would have given that information to Moses at Mount Sinai, because he hadn't yet decided that Moses couldn't go into the promised land. Okay, so who wrote it? Well, the rabbis cop out, my word, and they say, Joshua must have written it. Okay, and why not? So does it really matter? Not at all. Not. That's the nice thing about being Reformed Jews. We can say, God wrote the Torah. Okay, fine. The point is we have the Torah. Okay, that's what's important. Now, when was the first Torah completed? It depends on who you believe. Some scholars say that it was during the Persian Empire, starting 450 years before Christ, going to about roughly 350 years. That's one take on it. Some scholars say that it started later, 333 BC to 164 BC, which would have been the Hellenistic period, the Greeks. Okay? It almost doesn't matter, because we don't know. Nobody knows. What's the oldest Torah that's around? We do know. It was the Bologna Torah that was in the library of the University of Bologna. And that Torah was carbon dated back to 1190. Is that Bologna or Babylon? Bologna, Italy. Okay. Yeah, University of Bologna in Italy. 1190 is when the first Torah, the oldest Torah was written. That Torah sat in the University of Bologna 1190 AD, yes. Okay. That Torah sat with the University of Bologna for almost 1,000 years, and in 2016, they had a ceremony, and they returned the Torah to a synagogue in the town of Biella, B-I-E-L-A. I might not be pronouncing it right. It's in a small Italian town, but it had a large Jewish population in the Middle Ages. So the synagogue in Biella was in the heart of the ghetto in Biella, and they built a house in a courtyard, and the synagogue was in the second story of the house, because they didn't want to telegraph to people on the street that there was a synagogue there. So it was disguised as a house. Well, in 2016, the Biela Synagogue got it back, and that's where it is today. So if you ever want to see the oldest Torah around, go to Biela, Italy, and there it is. How is a Torah made? That's something that's worth thinking about, because we're about to have High Holy Days, and an awful lot of congregants are going to end up coming to the Bema and having contact in one way or another with the Torah. And most of us don't know much about it, frankly. So the question is, how's a Torah made? And that intrigued me. The components are tools. The first thing is, what kind of tools do you use to make a Torah? And the answer is no base metals. If a metal is used for making armaments, then you cannot use it for doing holy things. So silver is commonly used. Gold could be used. When we take the yod, the pointer, and we point with it, it's made of silver. It's not a base metal. Okay. The second question is, what materials do we use? And if we think about this, what's a Torah? Torah is, I've got a little one here just to demonstrate. Okay. Here's Torah. What is it? It's two pieces of wood, okay, and there's some sort of paper attached to it, and the paper is somehow sewn together, each sheet. Okay, so what have you got? We've got wood. That's okay, it's not a base metal. We have, we need paper, we need a pen, we need ink, and we need a thread to sew the pages together. Well, the problem is we can't just go to Staples and get these things. Okay, so how do you get paper, pen, ink, threads? And the answer is, okay, you use the tools, the silver and gold tools. They use glass to scrape off the ink from the Torah when the scribe makes a mistake. Okay, and they use glass because they can't use a base metal. It's okay to scrape off ink and rewrite the word if you make a mistake. But you cannot make a mistake when you write the name of God. If you do, if the scribe does, he has to redo the entire page. Okay, and I think it would help right now. Many of you know what a tikkun is, but some of you do not. So this is a tikkun, and what a tikkun is you open it at any page, anywhere, and one column is the way it looks in the Torah, and the other column is the way it looks in modern Hebrew, with vowels. Okay. I'm sorry?
So I didn't, that's yours?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna want a couple pages.
I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, there may be one here.
Oh, good.
Okay. I'll just pass this around. You can get an idea. If you look at the page without the vowels, it's very difficult to read, and much easier if you have vowels. Okay. It is for me. So, now, the problem is, how do you get straight lines? You can't buy line paper. So what does the scribe do to make the lines? And the answer is they use a thorn to make the lines in the parchment. Okay? And so that's how they have the lines. They can make the letters even, and it comes out looking like it's written on lines. The paper, making the paper for a Torah is an interesting project. That you have to use the animal skin from a kosher animal. Thank you. Yeah, just the animal skin from a kosher animal, and you can't kill an animal just for the purpose of using the hide. The animal has to be slaughtered for food or die of natural causes. Okay, so now you have, let's take a cow. You have a dead cow. What are you going to do? The cow gets butchered, and then the hide is removed from the animal. Now you've got animal hide. The first thing you do is get rid of all the hair and fat and blood and tissue that you can possibly get rid of easily. Okay. The second thing you do is you take that animal hide and you soak it in water. for as many days as it takes to make it soft. And then, when it's soft, you put it in water that's got a mixture of lime, and it sits there for 18 days. And what that does is it removes the hair. But even after the hair is removed from that process, you have to take glass and scrape off anything that's left. And now what you end up with is a wrinkled skin that's all bundled together and looks strange. Okay, they take that wrinkled skin and they put it on a stretcher, and they stretch it so that it becomes smooth. Okay, and when it's smooth, then they cut it the size of the page that they want to use for the particular Torah. Okay, that's called parchment or vellum, but that's the process to make one page. Okay, it would take, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. The page that is smooth and cut the way so that it can be sewn into a Torah is called a yeria. There are 3 to 8 columns on each yeria, and there are 250 yerias approximately in a Torah. So if you took the Torah and you spread it out, it's longer than a football field. Okay, it's huge. It's huge. A scribe will only do 1 yeria at a time, and there are a lot of reasons for it. I said you can't make a mistake when you write the name of God. So what a scribe typically does is they write the whole page out, but they never write the word of God. They leave a blank space for that. And then when the whole page is completed, the whole area is completed except for the name of God, then the scribe will typically go to minyan in the morning, have a bath in the mikveh, go back to his studio and get all psyched up, and then write the name of God. And typically, most scribes have a separate pen and separate ink for writing the name of God. And they really don't want to make a mistake because they have to do the whole page over again. Okay, so they're very, very careful. Now, the yeria you can't make a mistake on the final yeria before it goes in the Torah. The scribe has to check it against the tikkun and does so. Every word and every letter is checked by the scribe. And then 3 rabbis have to check it. And when the rabbis get through checking it, if they all agree that it's okay, then the scribe can sew it into the rest of the Torah. Okay, so that's a problem. How do you do that? And the answer is, well, first you got to have a pen to write. So what do you use for a pen? Originally, they used papyrus reeds. But as time went on and they began to figure out, hey, that's not such a great tool, they began to use quills, feathers from birds. And then in more recent times, they figured out that a turkey quill is the best possible quill to use for writing in the Torah. Okay, so they sharpen the quill with glass, and then they have a pen that they can write with. Now the problem is the lines on the paper they do with the thorn, and then the question is, how do you get your ink? Where do you go to get kosher ink? And the answer is you got to make it. Okay, so here's a recipe for kosher ink. You start with 1 pint of water, then you add half a pint of crushed gallnut powder. Now a gallnut is what happens when a gall wasp stings a tree. The tree swells, and then there's a powder formed. Well, that powder is highly desired by baby wasps and by scribes who make ink. Okay. Okay. Most of us have not come across gallnuts, but I'm giving you an ancient recipe. Okay. Then they have to add a 1/4 pint of crushed gum Arabic crystals, because that is the substance that will make it stick to the parchment. Okay. And then they have to add 1/8 of a pint of crushed copper sulfate crystals and 1/8 of a pint of crushed fine black carbon powder, which gives the ink the color. Now, modern scribes don't do this. they have industrialized this. So there's one rabbi in Brooklyn who makes the best ink in the United States. And he sells it in baby bottles, and everybody buys their ink from him. And that's his job. That's what he does. He makes kosher ink. And there are other people who make yerias, the parchment papers the size for the Torah. So a scribe can buy those materials. They don't have to make them anymore. But somebody's making them. Okay.
So they're still making them the same way?
Yes. Exactly the same way. Yes, they are. Okay. Now they have, it has to be sewn together. How are you going to sew it together? So the answer is they use the sinew or a ligament of a kosher animal that's twisted into a thread, and then they use a silver thimble and a silver needle to sew it into the Torah. Okay, silver being a non-base metal. Okay, this takes a lot of time. It takes 2 to 3 years to make a Torah. And the value of a Torah depends on the quality of the scribe, because a scribe is an artist, a religious person for sure, but an artist. So the more eloquent, if you will, the letters and the characters, the more valuable the Torah is. So if you consider that a very highly educated, skilled artisan is taking 3 years to make this, would $300,000 be out of sight? And the answer is no. Torahs are expensive, very expensive. And the better the scribe, the more they cost. And the best scribes are commissioned by big temples, and they make much more than $300,000 for a Torah. They're very, very expensive. Okay. Used Torahs are not. We have used Torahs. Okay. We don't have a $300,000 Torah. Okay. We don't have it. No. This is a temple where our entire maintenance budget is $12 for a push broom. You know. So we're not in that league. But a new Torah by a great scribe is something to behold. It's a work of art. Okay, together with being the Torah. The perspective that we should have is that, and your question is right on, the Torah is being made today exactly the same way it was being made 2,500 years ago. Exactly the same way. And when you come up for an aliyah next time, don't be afraid to touch the Torah, okay? Don't worry about it. You can touch it. These scribes also repair Torahs. So if ink got smeared, they can fix it. Touch it, feel it, because it's very interesting. Take a look at the sinew that is the thread that sews the pages together. Take a look at the lines. If you look carefully, you'll see the lines sketched in with the thorn. Okay, so now you know what you're looking at when you go to before the Torah. I just wanted to share with you those kinds of things, just education-wise, but I want to end this with a meditation that's not related. I'm just pulling this right out of the air because I thought it was a good thing. Harold Kushner wrote a book, The Lord is My Shepherd, and this is from him. There's a passage in the book of Exodus in which the Israelites are thirsty after they've marched through the Sinai wilderness. They come to a pool of brackish water, which is not fit to drink. And Moses is perplexed, but God shows Moses a tree that when thrown into the water, sweetens the water and makes it drinkable. Now, Kushner says he can imagine an exchange in which Moses asks God, what was the point of creating something utterly useless like undrinkable water? What exactly did you have in mind when you created cockroaches, gypsy moths, scorpions? Okay, and I'll add to that, I had a rabbi friend once who said, if there really was a God, he wouldn't have made mosquitoes. And God answers Moses, and he says, Moses, this is not a time for theology, for speculating on why certain things exist, or for asking God why. This is a time for action, for doing something to sweeten the bitterness and ease the people's thirst, rather than the debate the theological issue of why they are thirsty. You don't have to understand the world and everything in it to make it a better place. We will continue with the Mishiberach on page 253. We have a lot of congregants who are unfortunately on the Mishiberach list, and we ask that may God, who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless these members of our community. And they are Jerome Becker, Catherine Adele Celentano, Robin Cohn, Marty Glenn, Diana Heller, John William Hillebrecht, Jeffrey Kern, Panina Collicant, Barbara and Chip Kurtzman, Kit Levine, Bernadette Maloney, Jan Moret, Sharon Maslow, Arlene McDonald, Rick Moss, Sylvia Ramsdell, Frida Russell, Jane Sachs is on the list. She broke her pelvis last week, for those of you, and she's in Templeton Hospital now and could use visitors. Toby Shearer, Margaret Schmidt, Elliot Schwartz, Cheryl Shellub, John Sitters, Elizabeth Spencer, Aaron Steck, William Vinay, Ellen Weingarten, Jackie Zucker, and if 1/3 of them were here, we'd be full. This list is too big, but that's where we're at. So let us doing this. I'm sorry.
May I add a name or two?
Oh, I'm going to do that. Our tradition is that if you have a name or two or three of dear ones or friends that you feel need our prayers, please say that. I will point to you and feel free to say any name you wish. Just say. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. We are on page 253. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say amen. Mishiberach avotenu. Please join me. Mikor habracha lamotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say amen. Mishiberach imotenu. Mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalima, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say amen. We'll continue on page 258 with a prayer for our country because we need it. And let us do this together, and I'm picking the one at the bottom of the page that starts, O Guardian of Life and Liberty. And let us read this together. O Guardian of Life and Liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. We'll continue our service on page 282. And please rise for the Elena. We're going to do the version on the lower portion of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, v'lo samanu kamishpachot hadama, shelo sam helkenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kakol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. And continue on 284. Shehu noteh shamayim v'yosef al haaretz u'moshe v'yikaro b'shamayim mima'al ushkinatu zo b'gahei mehiromim hu Eloheinu ein od Emet malkeinu efesulato, kakohatu batorahato, viadato hayom v'hashivota, el levahavecha. Ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mima'al, v'al ha'oretz mitachat ein od. And on 287, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai, Lamelech al kol haaretz, vayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shamo echad. Please be seated. And I have a few announcements. I used to be very glad to come to Temple and have people tell me that my anniversary was coming up because I forget, But there are no anniversaries this week. There are 4 birthdays. Ellen Weingarten and Dawn Shearer Daner are today, September 1st. Okay. And Nakshan Margalit and Luann Alhadef are Monday the 4th. Okay. And then there's something that I want to bring to your attention because it's important. We're having a panel discussion on September 10th at 3 o'clock, 3 to 5 o'clock. The discussion is on anti-Semitism. And this is a big deal panel because we've invited, the problem is that there have been the problem is anti-Semitism, but it's become local. We have people, white power guys who are on the freeways carrying white power banners and Nazi signs and kids getting bullied in school, and we need to do something about it. So we're having this panel discussion on September 10th. We've invited all of the local politicians, the supervisors, the mayors, council people, school board members from all the North County school boards. Many of them came to our Holocaust Memorial Service, and we expect to have a pretty good turnout. In fact, I expect the place will be quite full. A week from Sunday, right.
Are we informing all of the Christian churches?
Yeah, we have distributed this to the Jewish Community Center, all the temples, the Ministerial Association, which represents 10,000 congregants. So the word's out. I'm going to there are 4 panelists. I'm going to do the history of anti-Semitism, which won't take long. I mean, we could spend a month on it, or we could do 10 minutes, but it's going to be 15 minutes. Okay. Bart Topham, some of you know Bart. He's just retired from San Luis PD. He was a captain. Bart is the foremost expert on hate crimes in the county. And he is going to try to teach us, when does anti-Semitism become a hate crime? When do you cross that line? Okay. We have Heather Branton, who's the pastor of the community church. It's United Church of Christ Congregational very liberal Protestant church and a good friend of our temple. Heather will be speaking about what can Christians do to help Jews with this problem. And finally, we have Dan Mizell, who is the director of the ADL for Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis counties. He will be speaking about what is anti-Semitism, how does it manifest itself, and what can we do about it? What do we do? If we were to walk out tonight and we had a bunch of Nazis out in front of the temple, what would we do? Or if our kid gets bullied in Pastoral High School, which is happening, what do we do? How do we handle these things? We have school boards that don't have the slightest idea what anti-Semitism is, and they don't recognize it when they see it. I don't mean just the board, but I mean the administration of the high schools and the junior highs. So our job is to educate ourselves and our community, and that's the goal of this panel discussion. So I'd urge you to come if you can. Those are the announcements. There will be, it's 3 to 5 o'clock. The presentations will take about an hour, and then we'll have at least an hour for questions and answers and discussion. And it should be a good event. I'm hoping it is. The worst that can happen is it's a dry run. If we don't get a huge attendance, we'll do it again if we have to. But this is a big deal. So, okay. Okay. Anybody else have any announcements? Did I forget something? I always do. So, okay. Rick and Shelley, if you go on our website, Congregation or Tzafon, it will have the calendar of all events that are happening for the month. Okay, good. I can't remember all the stuff we're doing, but it's there. And now we come to the Kaddish. Our thoughts turn now to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We have several yortzites tonight. Bessie Finkelstein, grandmother of Jackie Zucker, Emmanuel Hartman, uncle of Jackie Zucker, Betty Oliver, aunt of Jackie Zucker, Dora Shearer, grandmother of Dawn Shearer-Danger and Michelle Shearer-Robles, Sandra Candy Mandel, Jane Sachs' sister, Frances Michelson, aunt of Beryl Levine, Sheila Taylor of blessed memory, Sarah Terrence, grandmother of Allison Herson, Melvin Pollock, father of Rabbi Janice Marin, and we remember Dave Podlowski, husband of Gail, who passed away last week. We take into our hearts all those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. And as is our tradition, we will all rise for the Kaddish. Oh, yes, thank you. Please be seated. I forgot something. We have another tradition. And the tradition is that we light a yortzeit candle. And Beryl, would you light the candle? Of course. Thank you. And now, please rise. The Kaddish will be found on page 294. 294. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabba, v'alma divra chirusei v'amlich malchusei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kari v'yamru amen. Yehei shemei rabba mivarim, the all male Maya, Yisbarach, Vishtabach, Vishbar, Vishraman, Visnase, Visadar, Visalal, Visale, Shemay Duko, Briku, Leilam and Kha, Brachasa, Vishirasa, Tushbachasa, Beneamasa, Damiran, Biama, Viamaru, Amen. Hey Shlama, Rabba, and Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu, V'alkol Yisrael, Viamaru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Bimramav, Huyaseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'alkol Yisrael, V'amaru, Amen. And we will end our service, please be seated. We'll end our service singing Adon Olam on page 321. And there are probably 617 versions of Adon Olam, at least. But I would like to do one that it's a Sephardic tune, and some of you know it. If you don't, you will. And it goes like this, and once you heard it, please join in. Adon Olam asher malach b'teren kol yasin yivrach leis nasa behepsa kol azay melech shamo nikra v'acharei kiklot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu haveh v'hu yiyeh b'tifara Hu echad v'ein sheni lahamshilo lahabira v'li reshit v'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'hu eli v'haigo ali v'tzur hevli b'yesara v'hu nisi u'mahanos li manas kosi v'yom ekra V'yado avkiruhi, v'yadishan v'yaira, v'imruhi gaviyati, Adonai li v'lo ira. Good Shabbos.